Blood trickled down Ranger Tom Wilson's arm as he lay trapped beneath the fallen tree trunk. The sound of heavy footsteps approaching sent ice through his veins. He knew exactly what it was. A massive shadow fell across his face as an 800-pound grizzly bear towered over his helpless form. In these remote reaches of Yellowstone, no one would hear his calls for help. No one would find him in time. The enormous creature leaned down, its hot breath fogging in the crisp morning air, nostrils flaring as it caught his scent. Tom closed his eyes, preparing for the worst. 2 years away from these woods had made him careless. But when he opened his eyes again, what he saw in the bear's gaze defied everything he thought he knew about these wild predators. Against all scientific understanding, against all natural law, recognition flickered in those deep amber eyes. The vast wilderness of Yellowstone spans over 2 million acres across Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, home to one of the largest populations of grizzly bears in the lower 48 states. These powerful creatures command both respect and distance. No ranger understood this delicate balance better than Tom Wilson, whose 23 years of service had earned him the nickname Bear Whisperer among park staff. Tom never sought this title. His approach to wildlife management simply stemmed from a profound respect for these animals and their natural behaviors. Where others saw unpredictable danger, Tom recognized patterns and personalities. Each bear in his territory wasn't just a specimen to monitor, but an individual with distinct habits and temperaments. Tom kept meticulous records of their movements, their feeding patterns, and their interactions with the environment. His connection with Yellowstone's bears went beyond professional duty. As a child growing up near Grand Teton National Park, Tom witnessed his first grizzly at age 7. Instead of fear, he felt wonder watching the magnificent creature forage for berries. That moment shaped his future, leading him through wildlife biology studies and eventually to the ranger position he considered his life calling rather than merely a job. The conservation of these magnificent animals became Tom's personal mission. He led educational programs for visitors, teaching them about bear safety while instilling appreciation for these often misunderstood creatures. Behind the scenes, he fought for habitat protection and wildlife corridors that would ensure the bear's survival for generations to come. But nothing in his extensive experience could have prepared Tom for what awaited him upon his return to Yellowstone after a 2-year absence. The encounter that was about to unfold would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about wild grizzly bear behavior and memory. The relationship between Tom and the grizzly he named Thunder began on a stormy June morning 3 years earlier. While tracking recent bear activity near Lamar Valley, Tom spotted an unusual sight through his field scope. A young male grizzly limp along the riverbank, his right front paw raised painfully off the ground. What caught Tom's attention was not just the injury, but the bear's distinctive appearance. A jagged white marking streaked across his otherwise brown chest, resembling a lightning bolt. The bear's massive head turned skyward as thunder rumbled overhead, giving Tom immediate inspiration for the name. Park policy strongly discouraged intervention with injured wildlife, allowing nature to take its course. But Tom recognized that the bear's injury likely came from an illegal hunting trap that had been discovered and removed from the area days earlier. Human interference had caused this suffering. Tom made the controversial decision to monitor this bear closely and, if necessary, coordinate a medical intervention if the injury appeared life-threatening. For weeks, Tom tracked Thunder's movements, maintaining a respectful distance while documenting the bear's condition. The young grizzly's limp gradually improved, but during this recovery period, something unexpected developed. Thunder began to recognize Tom's presence. Unlike typical wild bear behavior, he showed no signs of aggression or fear when sensing the ranger nearby. Instead, he would often pause his foraging, raise his head, and calmly observe Tom before continuing his activities. Park biologists noticed something equally unusual. Thunder's territory began to overlap increasingly with Tom's patrol routes. When other rangers covered Tom's shifts, Thunder was rarely spotted. Yet on days when Tom worked, sightings of the distinctive bear became almost predictable. There was no food reward explaining this behavior, no pattern of conditioning that wildlife experts could identify. One autumn morning marked the turning point in their unusual connection. Tom sat documenting bear marking signs on trees, when he felt a presence behind him. He turned slowly to find Thunder standing just 30 yards away, watching him with what Tom could only describe as curiosity rather than predatory interest. Instead of reaching for his bear spray, Tom spoke softly, his voice steady and low. Thunder tilted his head, seemingly responding to the tone. For 15 minutes, man and bear shared the forest clearing before Thunder ambled away peacefully. The following spring brought frequent encounters. Tom would round a bend in the trail and spot Thunder fishing in the shallows. The bear would acknowledge him with a glance before returning to his salmon hunt. Other times, Thunder would appear on ridgelines above Tom's position, almost as if checking on the ranger's whereabouts. Fellow rangers witnessed these interactions with disbelief. Some voiced concern that Tom was crossing professional boundaries by forming what appeared to be a relationship with a wild predator. Senior park management eventually took notice. While they respected Tom's experience, they worried about the precedent. Wild bears recognizing and seeking out human company could lead to dangerous habituation. Yet Tom maintained that Thunder kept appropriate distance and showed no signs of food conditioning. This wasn't habituation, but something far more rare and complex. Thunder recognized Tom specifically while maintaining his natural wariness around other humans. For 2 years, their unusual connection deepened through these periodic, peaceful encounters. Then came the phone call that would abruptly separate them for what Tom feared might be forever. The call came on a crisp October morning. Tom stood at his favorite overlook, scanning the valley for any sign of Thunder, when his radio crackled with an urgent message to return to headquarters. His sister had suffered a severe stroke. As her only living relative, Tom needed to become her caretaker. A temporary reassignment to Grand Teton National Park would place him closer to the medical facility, where she would undergo extensive rehabilitation. Tom packed his belongings in a daze. The sudden family crisis left no time for proper goodbyes to the park he loved or the unusual friend he had made. His last patrol through Thunder's territory yielded no sightings of the distinctive bear. As Tom drove past the Yellowstone entrance sign, a distant storm rumbled across the mountains, a fitting farewell that reminded him of the day he first named the special Grizzly. The temporary reassignment stretched from months into years. His sister's recovery proved slower than expected, requiring Tom's constant support. Though Grand Teton offered its own natural wonders, Tom found himself scanning every bear from a distance, hoping to glimpse a white lightning mark across a broad chest. At night, he reviewed his journals of Thunder sightings, wondering if the unusual bear remembered him or had returned to the natural wariness that kept wild grizzlies alive. Reports from former colleagues painted a concerning picture of changes at Yellowstone during his absence. Increased tourism strained resources and pushed wildlife into more remote areas. A particularly harsh winter, followed by summer wildfires, reshaped parts of the ecosystem. Bear management policies tightened after 2 unrelated incidents with different grizzlies. Tom worried about Thunder's fate in this changing landscape, especially given the bear's unusual behavior around humans. His sister finally regained enough independence by the second spring of Tom's absence. When a senior ranger position opened at Yellowstone, Tom submitted his transfer request immediately. The approval arrived exactly 2 years after his departure. As he packed his truck for the return journey, Tom tempered his hopes with realism. Wild bears typically lived 15 to 20 years in natural settings, but territorial disputes, food scarcity, and human conflicts claimed many earlier. The chances of finding Thunder again seemed remote. Even if the bear had survived, would he remember the ranger after such a long separation? No scientific evidence suggested wild animals maintained such specific memories of humans over extended absences. The familiar arched entrance to Yellowstone National Park stirred emotions Tom had suppressed for 2 long years. Spring had arrived early, painting the landscape with vibrant greens and wildflowers. Tom rolled down his window, breathing in the distinctive scent of pine and sulfur that meant home. His ranger quarters remained essentially unchanged, as if waiting for his return. At his first staff meeting, Tom received warm welcomes mixed with curious glances. His reputation as the Bear Whisperer had grown into something of a legend during his absence. New rangers looked at him with undisguised interest, while veterans clapped his shoulder with genuine affection. When Tom cautiously inquired about any sightings of a grizzly, with a white lightning mark on its chest, the responses dampened his carefully managed hope. "Haven't seen that one in over a year," said Ranger Martinez, shaking her head. After that territorial dispute with the big male from the northern range, many of us figured he didn't make it. Another senior ranger added, "Bears come and go, Tom. You know the statistics better than anyone. With the drought last summer and the harsh winter, we lost several tagged bears. An untagged one like your Thunder would be impossible to confirm either way." Despite their skepticism, Tom requested patrol assignments in the areas where Thunder had previously established territory. His first week back, he meticulously checked every bear marking tree, every familiar fishing spot, and every meadow where he had once observed the distinctive grizzly. He discovered fresh claw marks on trees, overturned rocks, and other signs of bear activity, but nothing definitively linked to Thunder. In his off hours, Tom reviewed his old field journals, mapping Thunder seasonal movements. If the bear followed his previous patterns and had survived, Tom calculated the most likely locations for potential sightings as spring transitioned toward summer. The statistical probability seemed slim, but Tom couldn't shake the feeling of connection that had defied scientific explanation before. Other rangers watched Tom's systematic search with a mixture of sympathy and concern. Some worried he had romanticized his unusual connection with the wild predator. Most believed he was setting himself up for disappointment by searching for a specific bear that had likely perished or migrated to different territory. No one voiced the thought that even if Thunder had survived, the bear would almost certainly not remember a human after such a long absence. 3 weeks after his return to Yellowstone, Tom ventured into a remote section of the Hayden Valley. Recent reports mentioned increased bear activity in the area. The day had started with heavy rain, leaving the trail muddy and slick beneath his boots. Tom followed fresh bear tracks imprinted in the soft earth, his experienced eyes noting their impressive size. These belonged to a large male, possibly in his prime based on the stride length and depth. Tom rounded a sharp bend in the trail and froze. Less than 50 yards ahead stood an enormous grizzly bear. The animal's back was turned as it dug powerfully into a rotting log, searching for insects and grubs. Even from behind, Tom could tell this was one of the largest bears he had encountered in years. The massive shoulders and dark brown coat glistened with moisture from the recent rainfall. Standard protocol dictated a quiet retreat when encountering a bear at this proximity. Tom took a careful step backward, but his boots slipped on the muddy trail. The soft sound was enough. The bear immediately ceased digging and lifted its head, alert to the presence of an intruder. When the animal turned, Tom's breath caught in his throat. The white lightning-shaped marking spread across the bear's chest, now even more prominent against the darker adult coat. This was Thunder, significantly larger than when Tom had last seen him. 2 years had transformed the young grizzly into a magnificent specimen in the prime of his life. Tom remained perfectly still as conflicting emotions warred within him. Professional training demanded he ready his bear spray and prepare for a potential defensive encounter. But something in Thunder's posture made him hesitate. The bear showed neither the aggression typical of a surprised male nor the immediate retreat common in more cautious individuals. Instead, Thunder's head tilted slightly, nostrils flaring as he tested the air. His ears, usually flattened in wariness around humans, remained upright and forward. The bear took one hesitant step closer, then another. Tom held his position, hardly daring to breathe. At 30 yards, Thunder stopped. His eyes locked with Tom's in a moment that stretched beyond seconds into something timeless. Then the bear made a soft chuffing sound, a vocalization Tom had heard him make years before during their peaceful encounters. "Thunder," Tom whispered, the name escaping his lips involuntarily. At the sound of Tom's voice, the bear's behavior transformed in a way that defied everything known about wild grizzly bears. Thunder sat back on his haunches like a massive dog, his usual aggressive posture completely absent. His head bobbed slightly, almost like a nod of recognition. Then he raised his right paw, the same one that had been injured when they first met. and held it suspended in the air for several seconds before setting it down again. It was a gesture Tom had seen countless times in their past interactions, a behavior unique to this bear that Tom had documented extensively. There could be no doubt now. Against all scientific expectation, Thunder had not only survived but had recognized Tom after a 2-year absence. The bear remembered him. The forest fell silent as Thunder and Tom remained locked in mutual recognition. Neither moved for several long moments. Then Thunder did something that would soon challenge wildlife biology textbooks across the country. He lowered his massive body to the ground, rolled slightly to expose part of his vulnerable underside, and began rubbing his back against the earth. This submissive posture, typically reserved for mating rituals or interactions between bears with established hierarchies, had never been documented toward humans in wild grizzlies. Tom stood transfixed, scarcely believing what he witnessed. Thunder rose again and took several steps closer, now just 20 yards away. Park regulations mandated maintaining at least 100 yards from any bear. Safety protocols called for retreat or defensive measures at this proximity. Yet Tom remained rooted in place, guided by instinct and their shared history. The extraordinary encounter might have remained a private moment between man and bear had Ranger Martinez not appeared on the trail behind Tom. She had been checking trail conditions after the morning rain when she spotted her colleague, standing motionless before the massive grizzly. "Tom," she hissed, her hand immediately moving to her bear spray. "Do not move. I will create a diversion." At the sound of another human voice, Thunder's ears swiveled toward the newcomer. Any wildlife expert would have expected the bear to retreat into the forest or display aggressive behavior at feeling cornered. Instead, Thunder looked back at Tom as if seeking reassurance. "It's okay," Tom said softly, addressing both the bear and his colleague. "This is Thunder. He remembers me." Martinez froze in disbelief, her radio already halfway to her mouth to call for emergency backup. What happened next would be documented in her official report, corroborated by the shaking video she managed to capture, and would ultimately be witnessed by 3 other rangers who arrived minutes later. Thunder approached Tom with slow, deliberate movements. When just 15 feet separated them, the bear stopped. He extended his neck forward, stretching his head out in a gesture eerily reminiscent of a dog greeting its returning owner. Tom remained perfectly still, his posture non-threatening, but not submissive. Then Thunder circled Tom at a respectful distance, moving with unexpected gentleness for a creature weighing over 800 pounds. He stopped again, directly in Tom's path, and lowered his massive head to the ground. With his snout, he pushed something across the forest floor, toward the ranger. It was a ranger hat, Tom's old hat that had been lost during his hurried departure 2 years earlier. The sweat-stained fabric was dirty and weathered but unmistakable, with a distinctive scratch across the brim from when Tom had scraped it against a tree branch. Somehow, Thunder had found this personal item, perhaps near their last meeting spot, and had kept it or recognized it as belonging to Tom. Martinez and the other arriving rangers watched in stunned silence as Tom carefully crouched and retrieved the hat. Thunder continued his circling, maintaining his distance, but clearly establishing a protective perimeter around Tom. When another male bear appeared at the forest edge several hundred yards away, Thunder rose to his full height, facing the potential threat and letting out a warning sound that sent the other bear quickly retreating. For 23 minutes, witnessed by now 5 park rangers, Thunder maintained this unprecedented behavior. He showed no interest in food, displayed no aggression, and most remarkably, seemed completely focused on re-establishing his connection with Tom. When Thunder finally ambled away into the forest, he paused at the tree line, looking back once before disappearing among the pines. "I have worked in national parks for 17 years, Martinez whispered, her voice unsteady. "Nothing in my training or experience explains what we just saw." The other rangers nodded in silent agreement, their expressions a mixture of awe and disbelief. The radio at Martinez's belt crackled with a request for status update, but for a moment, no one moved to answer it. They had just witnessed something that would challenge fundamental assumptions about wild animal behavior and memory. News of the extraordinary encounter spread through the scientific community like wildfire. Within days, Wildlife biologists and animal cognition experts descended on Yellowstone. They set up observation posts near the site of the reunion, hoping to document further interactions between Tom and Thunder. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a leading expert in ursine behavior from the University of Montana, reviewed the footage captured by Ranger Martinez with growing amazement. Wild grizzlies typically avoid human contact and certainly do not display recognition behaviors toward specific humans after prolonged separation, she explained during a hastily arranged symposium at park headquarters. This case challenges our understanding of bear memory and social cognition. The scientific significance was profound. Typical wild bear behavior toward humans falls into predictable categories: avoidance, tolerance from a distance, or aggression when threatened or food conditioned. Thunder's behavior fit none of these established patterns. His apparent recognition of Tom, the return of the hat, and the protective circling represented cognitive and emotional complexity previously undocumented in wild bears. We've seen companion animals like dogs recognize owners after years of separation, noted Dr. James Chun, a comparative psychologist studying the case. But for a wild predator with no history of domestication to demonstrate this level of specific human recognition and apparent emotional memory is unprecedented in scientific literature. What made the case particularly remarkable was Thunder's continued wild behavior in all other contexts. Remote cameras showed he maintained normal territorial boundaries with other bears, foraged naturally, and appropriately avoided other humans. His exceptional behavior appeared reserved exclusively for Tom, suggesting a form of selective social bonding previously thought impossible between wild bears and humans. Following the extraordinary reunion, Yellowstone implemented special protocols for Thunder's territory. While maintaining the principle that wild animals should remain wild, the park acknowledged this unique case warranted careful management. Tom received permission to document their interactions under strict safety guidelines, always with a second ranger observing from a distance. Over the following months, Thunder and Tom established a respectful rhythm to their unusual connection. The bear never approached visitor areas and maintained his natural wild behaviors, yet when their paths crossed in remote regions, the recognition remained unmistakable. Thunder would acknowledge Tom with the distinctive head tilt and sometimes sit calmly nearby while the ranger recorded observations. Their connection never involved feeding or touching, boundaries that Tom insistently maintained for Thunder's safety and wild integrity. The case revolutionized understanding of bear cognition. Thunder demonstrated that wild animals could form specific memories of individual humans that persisted across years of separation. More remarkably, these memories appeared to carry emotional significance rather than mere recognition. The protective behavior Thunder displayed suggested something deeper than simple familiarity. For Tom, the experience transformed his approach to wildlife conservation. In public education sessions, he emphasized that Thunder's case was exceptional and dangerous to replicate, while using it to advocate for greater respect for wild animal intelligence. "We've underestimated their emotional capacity," Tom often explained. "This changes how we should approach conservation, not just protecting habitat but respecting individual animals as thinking, feeling beings." Perhaps most significant was how Thunder's story changed public perception. Thousands followed updates about the unusual friendship. People who once feared bears as mindless threats began seeing them as complex individuals worthy of protection and respect. Thunder's extraordinary memory and the bond he maintained with Tom, while remaining truly wild, became a powerful symbol of the mysterious connections possible between humans and the natural world. The story of the bear who recognized a ranger after 2 years reminds us that the wild creatures with whom we share this planet may understand and remember far more than we ever imagined. Their capacities for recognition, memory, and even emotional connection might just change how we view our responsibilities toward them and the wild places they call home. If you've been moved by Thunder and Tom's remarkable story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary wildlife encounters and conservation stories from around the world. Hit that notification bell to join our community of nature lovers and never miss our daily uploads of amazing animal intelligence and unexpected wildlife connections.